know the truth. I didn't kill Lilly and Jack.
It's been 6 weeks now since you've seen Lilly and Jack. I just want to ask, how are you holding up?
It's been a long 6 weeks. I know that everybody basically in the world at this point is always wanted to know like what happened. It's been from sadness to anger at this point. And I know the RCMP and major crimes are working around the clock trying to piece everything together, and I'm grateful for that. But it always leaves the question, 6 weeks has gone by, and we know at this point they're not in the woods, and where are they?
Did you feel in the beginning that they suspected you?
Of course. The stepfather was always a prime suspect right off the beginning.
You felt that from the beginning?
Yeah.
But you don't feel that now?
No, I don't feel that at all. I asked for the lie detector exam, the polygraph exam. I gave them my phone. I told them I, do drug tests because there's a lot of rumors online about a drug party. Mm-hmm. I know the person that said those rumors, and it was just to take the heat off themselves.
Was there any kind of party?
No.
Was there any kind of gathering that someone might have thought was a party?
No.
If what I'm about to tell you is true, if the fragments we've been shown, the whispered family conversations, the trail camera glitches, and the oddly timed footprints all stitched together into a single pattern, then we're not looking at a simple missing persons mystery. We could be looking at a planned removal, a family secret, and a trail of decisions that led 2 little lives to vanish from a quiet Nova Scotia morning. In this video we'll walk, step by slow step, through the most explosive claim to come out of this case so far. Daniel Martell, the children's stepfather, has gone on record saying he believes Lilly and Jack are alive, and that their mother, Malaya, may have had other plans. I'll lay out the context, the evidence that supports and contradicts that claim, the loose ends that investigators are still chasing, and what it would mean if those words are true. By the end, you'll hear everything that points toward a possible deliberate removal, and everything that suggests we still don't yet have the whole story. If you want the latest, hit subscribe now and leave a comment below. And if you're moved by what you hear, say a prayer for Lilly and Jack. This is a story that demands clarity, and today we hunt for it. On May 2nd, early in the morning, a 911 call changed a quiet rural community forever. 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack were reported missing from their home in Lansdowne Station, Pictou County. That first day, the story was simple and terrifying. The children disappeared without an obvious trace. Over the following weeks, hundreds of volunteers, search and rescue teams, drones, and RCMP officers scoured miles of forest, dozens of tips poured in, and the case widened into a full-blown investigation. What the public has received since then has been a mix of factual reporting, where and when searches happened, what pieces of evidence were recovered, and a flood of theories and interviews from relatives, online sleuths, and community members trying to make sense of the silence. One fragment that has kept resurfacing is the pink blanket, a physical object linked to Lilly early in the search. It was found in 2 pieces, allegedly in separate locations, and it became the first physical clue in an otherwise nearly empty landscape. Not long after, searchers reported a child-sized boot print on or near a natural gas pipeline trail. Court documents say the larger print had a tread marking with the number 29. Investigators compared that marking to a boot size the family purchased for Lilly and noted the same characteristic. Taken together, the blanket and the boot prints became focal points for searchers who believed these traces could indicate the route the children took, or someone staging a scene to make it appear they had wandered off. But this is where the story grows complicated. Multiple people present during the early searches, family members, informal volunteers, and even children who accompanied search parties, potentially contaminated locations before forensic teams could secure them. Footprints that might have been important could have been overlaid, moved, or even created accidentally by people who meant well but didn't understand the consequences. The presence of other children that day, some barefoot, some in boots, left investigators with questions. Were those prints from Lilly and Jack? Were they from unrelated passers-by or searchers? Or were they, in the most troubling scenario, planted? That last possibility, that evidence may have been staged, is not a fringe claim. According to what Daniel says investigators told him, there is a belief within the police that at least one piece of evidence, the pink blanket, was planted. Daniel relayed that investigators told him, in effect, "We think it was placed there." If a planted blanket is true, the implications are enormous. It suggests knowledge of the investigation's blind spots, the willingness to influence the search direction, and the presence of people close enough to the scene to insert that item without being seen. But even that raises immediate, thorny questions. Who had access? Who benefited from creating the illusion of children wandering into the woods? And why would someone do that? We have, alongside the physical traces, a complex web of family relationships and shifting alliances. Darren, a relative who's been visible online and in interviews, occupies a curious position between family sides. He's been described by some as a bridge, connected to Malaya's extended family, but known to those on Daniel's side too. He claims to have relayed conversations between Malaya and others, and those accounts feed into the narrative that Malaya was considering leaving the household shortly before May 2nd. Daniel has repeatedly said, citing what he was told, that 2 weeks before the disappearance Malaya told family members she wanted to leave and that she had other plans. According to Darren, who claims to have been asked by Malaya's grandmother to help, Malaya was offered refuge by relatives, and she said she had a different plan. If true, this could be read two ways. One, she intended to remove the children for safety or to escape a situation she feared, or two, it could be read as something more sinister, something premeditated to obscure an unlawful act. But as always with family hearsay, the only thing we can say with certainty is that this is an allegation, not a proven fact. Let's slow down and look at motives and plausible explanations. There's a line of thought that appears repeatedly in interviews and online commentary. Child Protective Services had, at times, been in touch with the family months before the disappearance. Court documents and reporting confirm there was a CPS file, triggered by concerns raised at the children's school related to developmental delays and possibly signs of neglect or injury. In that context, some argue that a mother fearing the loss of her children to state custody might act precipitously, removing them to keep them out of the system. If Malaya had been told CPS could remove the children, a desperate plan, whether temporary relocation to family or a more clandestine move, could explain why someone might stage footprints or leave a blanket to point searchers in the wrong direction. But motive alone does not equal action, and circumstantial timelines do not equal guilt. Consider the stepfather Daniel's own account. He has taken polygraphs and publicly denied being involved. He says he believes the children are alive and that he has an idea of who has them. Because he passed polygraph questions about whether he murdered or conspired in murder, it complicates the narrative for those who might want to accuse him. Polygraphs are not admissible in court as conclusive proof, but they do form part of investigative decision-making and public perception. Daniel's willingness to speak, to declare the children alive and explicitly suggest his partner might have other plans, changes the shape of the conversation. It moves some voices away from an accidental wandering theory and toward a theory of intentional removal. So where do the cadaver dogs fit into all of this? 4 months, General Police dogs and Send-in-the-Air K9 units were deployed in the area. These units are trained to pick up the scent of a living person in open air, not the specific odor of decomposition. Many observers, including family members and armchair investigators, have criticized the delay in bringing in human remains detection dogs. Those specialized cadaver dogs, flown in from other provinces, were eventually brought into parts of the search area. RCMP publicly maintain they have no definitive information showing the children are deceased, and that deploying cadaver dogs is simply another investigative avenue to explore. From an investigative viewpoint, cadaver dogs are a tool that can provide leads in places that might otherwise remain soil, leaf, and shadow. They can find scent in buried or concealed areas, and in some cases can detect remains after long periods. But their effectiveness depends on environmental factors and whether decomposition odors are present or have been dispersed. Bringing them in months after the disappearance reduces the odds of detection if remains were present earlier and have since been disturbed or moved. That said, cadaver dogs have been credited in other cases with finding material long after an event, sometimes even years later, so their inclusion is important even if it feels belated. Let's go back to the pipeline tracks, the detail that produced one of the most puzzling findings. 3 sets of children's tracks were found together on the pipeline trail, 2 booted and 1 barefoot. The photograph circulated in social channels shows what appears to be 3 parallel trails. Observers and witnesses have asked how 2 children, matching the sizes of Lilly and Jack, and another child, barefoot, would be walking together in a remote area where no other missing child has been reported. Theories attempt to explain this incongruity. Perhaps the barefoot prints belonged to an earlier child who passed that way. Perhaps a searcher's child left them accidentally. Perhaps Lilly or Jack removed boots to clear stones. The problem is that the site was not sealed and was subject to multiple passes by searchers and by non-official visitors in those early hours. Contamination is likely, and contamination destroys the evidentiary value of footprints that might otherwise be forensic gold. Now consider the forensics around the boot tread. Investigators took a cast and noted a number 29 marking on the tread, which matched a brand and size that Malaya had purchased for Lilly. For some, that match deepens suspicion. For others, it could be circumstantial coincidence. Footwear is mass-produced. Finding a marking that corresponds to a boot size often requires additional linking evidence before it becomes definitive. And again, the scene's exposure to other boots, from searchers, from family, from volunteers, complicates forensic interpretation. Anyone with access to the couple's home or possessions could, in theory, have produced a tread impression. That possibility underpins the investigators' careful, yet cautious, public messaging. They're pursuing leads that suggest suspicious activity without announcing premature conclusions. Another crucial thread running through this case is digital activity and witness statements, deleted messages, contradictory timelines, and people who lawyer up when re-interviewed. We've seen this pattern in many missing persons cases where social media is ubiquitous. People post, remove posts, backtrack, and sometimes coordinate narratives. The RCMP have confirmed they are following digital leads and re-interviewing persons of interest as new material surfaces. For example, people in Darren's network and members of the family's extended circle have been asked to revisit prior statements. Someone, according to insiders, cracked, meaning a witness changed their story or provided new information under pressure. That type of development often propels investigations forward, because it either produces corroboration for prior suspicions or forces a re-evaluation of earlier assumptions. Let's pause and take stock. Where are we now, and what are the legitimate avenues for getting closer to truth? First, the RCMP continue to treat the disappearance as an active investigation. They've collected thousands of video clips, followed hundreds of tips, conducted polygraphs, and obtained physical evidence, all of which they are still analyzing. Second, family dynamics matter. If Malaya did express a desire to leave weeks before the disappearance, that is relevant, but it is hearsay until corroborated. Daniel's public statements about the children being alive and the mother having other plans are important because he's a primary participant, yet they must be balanced against physical evidence and official findings. Third, contamination of early search sites is a real problem that could obscure truth. Fourth, the late arrival of cadaver dogs and questions about which K9 units were used earlier highlight resource and procedure issues that will be scrutinized by both investigators and the public. Now let's walk through a couple of hypothetical scenarios, grounded in the known facts, so you can weigh which seems more plausible. Scenario 1. The children wandered off and became lost. This is the original, humanly heartbreaking possibility. It explains the absence of clear traces and the difficulty in finding them despite a massive search effort. It also fits with history in rural areas where children occasionally wander into dense woods and become disoriented. The counterpoint is that the terrain was searched extensively, and seasoned searchers noted the lack of obvious signs a child had become injured or trapped nearby. Scenario 2. A stranger abduction. This is terrifying and, despite RCMP publicly saying there was no immediate evidence of stranger involvement, cannot be ruled out. The rural nature of the area could facilitate a quiet, opportunistic abduction for someone who knew the family's rhythms. But again, investigators have not found tire tracks, surveillance footage, or witness reports that are convincing in this direction so far. Scenario 3. Deliberate removal by someone with access to the children. This is the hypothesis Daniel and some relatives have suggested, and it intersects with the CPS contact. the alleged prior statements by Malaya about leaving, and the possibility that evidence was staged. Under this scenario, the blanket and the boot prints might have been used to create a false narrative of wandering. The presence of people who had access to the home and who had opportunities to influence early searches becomes central. This hypothesis is consistent with investigators' belief that certain evidence may have been planted. But it is important to stress that investigators also need corroborative, admissible evidence to charge anyone, and so far in public reporting, no one has been charged in relation to the disappearance. If you're wondering why the RCMP haven't publicly confirmed Daniel's claim or Darren's accounts, consider the legal and operational realities of a sensitive missing children investigation. Law enforcement can't announce every lead in public without risking the integrity of ongoing inquiries. Statements that suggest suspects or motives can compromise witness cooperation or allow those being investigated to alter evidence or flee. That's why the police are often quiet until they have a search warrant, a court order, or sufficient corroboration to act. Daniel's public assertions, while dramatically headline-worthy, are, in many ways, the sort of thing investigators would prefer to verify quietly before going public. What would it take to turn suspicion into actionable proof? Several things. Forensic confirmation linking physical material, hair, fibers, DNA, directly to the children in a place suggesting concealment would be powerful. Credible witness testimony placing a person or vehicle at a relevant location at the relevant time, ideally corroborated by metadata like cell tower pings, surveillance footage, or GPS logs, would be critical. Digital evidence, deleted messages recovered from devices, GPS logs placing a vehicle at the bridge or pipeline at the right time, or payment records for travel and hotel stays, can transform circumstantial suspicion into a prosecutable case. Investigators are clearly pursuing those avenues. The public reporting about re-interviews, sealed warrants, and digital subpoenas suggests they're assembling a mosaic of corroborating details. We should also address the human cost and the community response. The paternal grandmother and other relatives have publicly expressed frustration at the pace and transparency of the investigation. They say tactics like bringing cadaver dogs months after the disappearance should have been used earlier, and they continue to organize vigils and petition for more action. That public pressure can keep resources focused on a case and can encourage witnesses to come forward, but it also risks spreading unverified claims that muddy the waters. The best contribution community members can make is to keep pushing for answers while letting investigators do their work, and to report any credible information they have to the RCMP or Crime Stoppers rather than posting unverified allegations on social media. So what should you, as someone watching this video, do if you think you have information? First, don't assume you understand the whole picture based on snippets or a single interview. Second, contact local authorities, in this case the RCMP Major Crime Unit handling the Sullivan case, or call Crime Stoppers with any tip, no matter how small it seems. Third, preserve any evidence you might have, screenshots, messages, dashcam video, or timestamps. Investigators are experts at piecing together disparate materials. One small thing can be the hinge on which an entire case turns. Let's return for a moment to Daniel's statement that the children are alive and that their mother had other plans. If that statement is true, and if Malaya intentionally moved the children to keep them away from CPS or to protect them from a situation she feared, it's a scenario that raises legal and moral complexity. A mother removing her children without legal authority can be committing a crime, even if she believes it's in their best interest. If she thought CPS would imminently remove the kids, she might have panicked. Parental fear, mental state, and perceived risk are critical components to examine in such circumstances, and they're precisely the kind of nuance that courtrooms and investigators must parse carefully. If Daniel's claim is not true, if it's wishful thinking or an attempt to shape public narrative, then the consequences are dangerous in a different way. It can misdirect resources, create false leads, and inflict further pain on a grieving community. That's why responsible reporting and cautious interpretation are essential. We must not convert suspicion into conviction without hard evidence. At the same time, we cannot ignore credible tips or the lived experience of those closest to the children. As we consider what may come next, remember these operational truths. Investigations move in fits and starts, forensic processes take time, and digital traces often reveal more than witnesses initially do. Polygraphs are informative but not dispositive. Cadaver dogs are a tool among many. Family testimony is vital but must be corroborated. And above all, no single narrative, no matter how compelling, should replace careful, methodical policing. In closing, what can we reasonably expect in the short term? The RCMP will likely continue targeted searches where they have leads, continue forensic analysis on any items seized, and pursue digital subpoenas and follow-up interviews where inconsistencies have appeared. Publicly, they'll maintain silence on specifics until they can announce charges or assert a clear direction. For the family, the community, and anyone who cares about Lilly and Jack, the imperative remains the same. Keep the story alive without spreading unverified claims, report credible information to authorities, and support the search for truth in ways that prioritize evidence over speculation. The disappearance of Lilly and Jack has shaken a small community and captivated a nation. We've seen how footprints, a blanket, a family quarrel, and a single interview can magnify into a national conversation about loss, responsibility, and the limits of investigative systems. Daniel's claim that the children are alive and that their mother had other plans deserves scrutiny and, if true, swift legal examination. But it also deserves the hard work of confirmation, forensic proof, corroborated testimony, and clear investigative findings. If you've watched this far, thank you. Keep pressing for answers. Keep the names of Lilly and Jack in your thoughts. If you know anything at all, a dashcam clip, a throwaway comment that now seems important, a vehicle you noticed, call the RCMP or Crime Stoppers right away. Small details become decisive when investigators collect them together. We will bring you updates as they become available, and when new verified information emerges, we will examine it carefully and critically. For now, hold space for 2 children who are still missing. Hold space for a family fractured and pleading for clarity. And hold faith in the process that seeks to convert suspicion into proof, rumor into truth, and loss into resolution. We owe Lilly and Jack that much, and we owe it to ourselves to be exacting in how we seek the truth.